Kinyanjui and Paul Aol, who are all lawyers, and we're looking at the decision by the appeals court yesterday, and Al Ghurair being given the green light to go ahead and print the presidential ballot papers and the way forward. But let me come back to you, Harrison. We cut you short, but also let's move on the conversation. And is Kenya at a point where we are misusing the judiciary? Are we taking advantage? Because when it comes to, it's not just the ballot printing tender. We have cases to do with corruption. We have all sorts of things. We keep going back and forth to court to a point where we hardly get anything done.
Well, it is a right of any Kenyan to go to court. But it gets to a point where you see a pattern which is repeated in a manner that amounts, in my humble view, as an abuse of the court process. And then also there is now the habit, the rising habit, I should add, of an element in our society, political class, if you choose, who then have seen that you can use the the judiciary as a means by which then to redirect the electoral process. That, of course, is wrong. When you have people who say that they are going to court, suing the IEBC, for instance, for certain orders, with the aim of precipitating this, what Joy had said, the crunch, the time crunch, that then comes and undermines the IEBC's credible conduct of the election, then you find that that constitutes an abuse of the court process. Why do I say that? In the procedures that we have of filing a case, there is a process which is rarely and hardly used. And I challenge my learned friends here to tell me, when is the last time you heard of a case stated? A case stated is what you have an issue taken by someone to court without the adversarial element. Case stated. These people, if they really work in on having, for instance, the IEBC's relationship with the public in terms of public participation in the tendering process, they would have had a case stated without then having an adversarial approach to the IEBC. They did not. So when you see the motivation then that emerges out of that, the totality of it tells you that these are people who are keen on abusing the court process. And then turning around and saying the IEBC did not conduct a credible election. So you are orchestrating an event which then you want to capitalize upon. That is an abuse of the court process.
Paul, your comments on that?
I think, to me, I find it, first of all, misleading. Abuse of the court process was not really an issue in this case because, first of all, he admits that anybody has the right to approach the court at any given time. The courts actually, like I've said again, the issues that came for determination, to me, were very, very, very helpful, even for the general election. Like, for example, there was the issue of transparency and accountability, the issue of bias, the issue of whether there was a relationship between Al Ghurair and one of the participants in this election. I don't know why we are really downplaying these issues, but to me, those were the real issues. And I can actually tell you, even the issues of tendering and public participation, how they were actually dealt with. They were dealt with on a very, very good issue that right now they are actually settled on whichever process you adopt when you are tendering, whether you need to go through the public participation. Like I'll repeat again, this case determination got to the point of that after we've had you, the realistic expectation is we must have this election by 8th.
Okay.
What do we do?
All right. Yes. Given that there were those issues that were raised and Al Ghurair still has been given the green light now to go ahead and print the ballot papers, the presidential ballot papers, because that was the bone of contention. Are you satisfied that IEBC is now ready to give a credible election?
Yes, I'm satisfied because of two things. One, like he's also mentioned the issue of the curricular report. Actually, NASA were trying to bring the issue of bias and spatial relationship, which the court said they were unable to prove. Because I can tell you, if you go on an election when the common perception that is in the public is that there is some sort of relationship, regardless of the outcome, the election was going to be contested. To me, being determined that they did not prove the issue of the spatial relationship or the issue of bias, they were unable to deal with the issue of bias, to me settles, and actually, I'll say as a lawyer, now I'm more keen that if you brought the issue of spatial relationship, and bias and you are unable to prove it in court, then you should actually accept that this election, on the basis of accountability and transparency, you should not actually challenge the result on that basis.
All right, Joy, way forward, and maybe just your message to Kenyans, as I see we are running out of time, in regards to now that that is out of the way. IEBC basically should now concentrate purely on having themselves ready for the 8th.
And that's what Abdul Badida told them the day they had the public participation trial, the day the presidential candidates went. And he told them, look, we're looking to you to run a credible election, so go ahead and take charge. And I'm very happy with this Chebukati Commission, because one of the things that we have seen with this commission, they have kept a very even keel. And even with all this turbulence, they've kept their eye on the ball. While they have been in court doing all these things, at the secretariat level, we've seen a lot of activity going on. I've attended advocates' trainings on how to handle election petitions afterwards. We have seen them coming out also and training members of the public, maybe not to the extent that we could have seen, but we have seen them trying to educate members of the public on the process. We have seen even the way that they have prepared themselves. You can tell that they did not let all this hula baloo sidetrack them from trying to carry on their processes. So on that one, I give them kudos. But also on the Kenyans, one thing I want to urge Kenyans is this is our process. Let us, as the 19.6 million voters, let us take our position and take our right. Political parties are the ones that have the duty, for example, to examine registers, to find out how many people in a polling station, to get enough agents to be at the polling station, to educate their agents on how to look at the forms, how they should be filled, how the KIMS works. So let them take care of that nitty-gritty. You go, vote, go back home, take a cup of tea and watch on TV what is going on. Because at the end of the day, if we allow ourselves to be the politicians' arms and legs to go and fight each other, they will be insulated from it all. But if we exercise our right and leave the rest to be dealt with by the IEBC, by the political parties, by the observers, then at the end of the day, as the electorate, will be able to have a credible process without unnecessary antagonism. Okay. Because where we are right now, it's a pressure cooker situation for no good reason. And at least yesterday it was diffused. So let's simmer down and just carry on.
It was diffused maybe by the appeals court giving Al Ghurair the go-ahead, but we also had the NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga coming out and releasing 42 names of police officers who he claims basically are being sent out to polling stations. Harrison, from a legal perspective, what is the procedure? Should he have that information? And if it is credible, what is the procedure for him to have that taken care of, rather than just making a public announcement and leaving it to Kenyans to guess whether it is true or not?
The problem with him, and I need to tell him, take free advice from me. No legal fee, no. I'm going to send to you. Stop telling your people there is rigging. Listen to me carefully. They will have this build-up perception that you will not win allegedly because you have been rigged out. And therefore,
what if he has information that is...
Let me finish that point. I'm coming to that.
Okay.
And I'm also going to give him free advice on how to deal with that. Maybe he's not getting some. Now, if you say that you are enabling, as it were, the other side which you say you oppose to come out and vote and say, he said that we have been rigged in to, you know, I'm going to turn up and vote. And then the flip side, the converse is true. Your wing will say, oh, you know, our man says he lost in 2007. Our man says he lost in 2013. Our man now says he's going to lose. So why am I going to vote? So that invariably breeds a voter apathy on his wing. So that's free advice for you. Second, if you have this allegation that 42 people, allegedly, whoever they are, indeed have that anticipated action, negative as it may be, why don't you just do the credible thing? Go and invoke the Elections Act. Report a crime, have them arrested, have them then arraigned in court, and show up in court and testify for their prosecution and conviction. That way, the whole world will believe you. But as of now, that is merely seen as propaganda, escapist, and indeed a justification for your eventual loss. Take it from me.
All right, Paul? Why not just follow a legal system to have this done? Even as you make the announcement, you've already done the footwork of ensuring, if there is information of 42 officers who are being deployed, that this is not just propaganda.
I'm finding it strange that on one end, if Raila was to go to court, he'll actually see it as an abuse of the court process. But basically, if you look at what Raila Odinga is trying to say, Raila Odinga is trying to say that the issues that were raised by Kriegler, we are actually not dealing with. And he's saying all these things are connected. Like, yes, Kriegler was able to say that 2007 election, there was really interference by the security agencies. That is what basically Raila Odinga is saying, that we've still not changed that. These people are setting this up. They are people they've specifically trained to interfere with this election.
But if there's evidence to that effect, why not use the legal system, just like we have with Al Ghurair, and have the court decide on whether or not it is credible?
Just a minute. If you look at, once again, I'll go to this ruling. The courts in this ruling are saying that regardless of the issues you've brought in, we must have elections by 8th.
No. The court said, your cross appeal.
Yes.
You did not, even on the second bite of the cherry before the Court of Appeal, you did not table evidence that was credible enough to sustain your allegations. So it was dismissed. It was thrown away for lack of evidence. Your allegations of association.
All right. No. Let me clarify, actually. The Court of Appeal did not, on the main issue of public participation, they did not actually disagree with the High Court, actually, on the issue of direct tendering.
They did.
On what was supposed actually to be followed.
They say it can't be.
Yes?
It can't be. You can't have direct, public participation. It's self-defeat. You cannot. How is it even possible that I give you direct tendering, myself, and then they are competitors? How can you have public participation? So let's be clear about it.
And yes, Brenda.
If I may weigh in on this matter, the police actually issued official communication and said it was a normal decommissioning of officers so they can join the NIS. And in the question that you asked earlier is also my concern. Is some of this information, yes, it is true that these ones are being decommissioned so they can be recommissioned, but first and foremost, why is this in the public domain? How is this information combustible or digestible by the normal public? To what end? How does it help with a credible process? For me, that is more concerning, because it may be true that some officers have been removed from being uniformed officers and are being trained and deployed for something else. You tell us that they're going to interfere with the process. How exactly is a police officer able to interfere with the KIMS, for example? How exactly are they able to interfere? That, to me, would be more interesting information than here is the names of the guys who have been decommissioned.
And for the sake of the public.
The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He can decide, by the way, tomorrow, you commissioned officer, you're no longer commissioned, you go back, you're now an NCO, or he can decide tomorrow, by the way, you're Major General. That is part of his purview as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Kenya. But if you can tell me, look, these guys were decommissioned, and their decommissioning is directly, this is how it correlates. Then even as a Kenyan, I'd be like, oh, okay, fine, there's something here. But simply saying I have 42 names, in my opinion, there I have to agree with Harrison. It's a propaganda war, because the ones who will interrogate it will think, this is hot air. But there's somebody who listens to the words of Baba. And when Baba has spoken, Baba knows what he's talking about. And now those are the people who, when something happens, they'll be like, by the way, he told us. And when you start whipping up the emotions of the public, then at the end of the day, what happens is the reaction is based on something that is not real. But by that time, it's too late. You know, when it's like when you're throwing stones at a guy because he's alleged to be a thief, and he's saying, I'm not a thief, I'm not a thief. After you've already burnt him and he's seen that, then it emerges, by the way, he actually just had a problem with a fellow and he decided to call thief. By that time, it's too late. So let's be responsible as politicians, as leaders, so that we don't whip up unnecessary emotion, especially because with our history. And, you know, with a reference to the Kriegler report, we already had 2013. By 2013, we had learned some lessons and were able to avert major drama in 2013. And I believe in 2017, we'll be building up on what we had in 2013. So we can't be looking back at 2007 all the time. We have moved on as a people. Yep. We have moved on as a nation.
Paul, if this is not just to whip up emotions, what benefit, from your perspective, is it to make an announcement like that without necessarily following the procedures that are required for you to prove that this is what is actually happening and have action taken? Because just like Joy says, there are those who will not go and read or are not lawyers who will understand that there is a procedure and this can be done. The minute it is put out there, whether by the president, whether by Raila Odinga, or whether by any of the presidential candidates, it becomes a point of reference to them that this is what the government is doing. What benefit is it to Kenya, in short?
Basically, I think Raila Odinga is more or less, maybe it's the way he has put it, but I think Raila Odinga is more or less keen on transparent and accountable elections. But what Raila Odinga is actually specifically saying, that this is not a normal administrative action. These people that have singled out have been brought in to take care of a specific bit.
And that is okay.
Yes.
That is understood. But the question is, if that be the case, why not present the evidence and anything that supports what he is saying, so that it's not just an allegation, it's not just propaganda. Here's the evidence, and this is what I'm saying, so that now the relevant authorities can take it up.
First of all, I really don't think that it's only Raila Odinga who has presented it this way, because I can tell even the president at some point in a political rally has castigated the courts for ruling the way they've done. So to me, I think it's politicians, they do their things the way they do. I'm more keen on how now the police will react and how they'll even deal with the issue of why only for this 42 and why was it that Raila Odinga. And to me, I think it's a way of raising so that we actually get to see that are these people really being brought in to do what Raila Odinga is doing, or this is just a normal administrative action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harrison?
First of all, I don't believe it. I don't believe him. I mean, he rises up and say that, oh, you know, Matiang'i is out there to rig the elections. And he doesn't even apologize to Matiang'i, by the way. He had said that earlier on about Nkaiseri. Now he has said that Jubilee is in bed with the IEBC. No proof, nothing, just like Joy is saying. You cannot bandy out, allegations without anything substantive in proof. Yeah, fine, he has those names of redeployed officers. Redeployment is a regular thing. But we are at a stage where we need safety and security in the conduct of the elections. And I think one aspect of the IEBC's preparedness is its returning officers, their safety, their well-being. And given the high-octane election that we are just about to get into, I think there are some contestants in this election who may have pegged a very high premium on their win or perceived win, such that they would be prepared even to go and attack, abduct, or even hijack a returning officer, because the returning officer has the key to that KIMS, data feed into the IEBC, and therefore, if they can have control or manipulation of that returning officer, then, of course, they can have some edge, as the case may be. I don't know. So I think when you see the totality of these issues going to court to try and trip the IEBC insofar as the ballot papers is concerned, the devices to transmit the results, the kits themselves, and so on and so forth, that is meant to derail the IEBC. Then they say that, oh, the returning officers have been transferred. We needed it done in a way that we approve, they themselves. Then you can see they would like to have a direct control over the election. And if they do not, as indeed right now they have not been able, then they turn around and spin this propaganda about rigging. Every day you hear rigging.
Right.
No proof. No proof.
We'll need to conclude shortly. Joy, Brenda, your message to Kenyans, because we know politicians are politicians, and they're likely to continue making statements that either can be verified or not. What is your message to Kenyans, especially given that we only have, I believe it's 17 days to the elections?
One thing that I hope that Kenyans are going to do this time is those of us who are already accredited to be observers, because this one has already been put in place. Let us know what we are looking for. Let's just not go and sit there, and let us be attentive. The IEBC has laid out the procedures of what they're supposed to do. For example, this time around, we are going to rely heavily on technology. One thing that we have today that we did not have in 2007 is a camera phone. Let us be our own defense, especially those who will be accredited to be in the polling stations. And for the returning officers, we have a decision coming out that the elections they should transmit the results within 7 hours. If that, for example, happens, then it means people have to work with very strict timelines. We have to be people who are aware of what our responsibilities are. The agents, they need to understand how the forms are filled, how the transmission is done. The technology companies, let the systems work on that day. One thing I want Kenyans to understand is that a success on the 8th is a win for all of us. It's not a win for this party or that party. At the end of the day, if we have an election that is credible, all of us will be happy with the outcome. We'll go out and have a drink and live to fight another day. And now the next big thing will be Sport Pesa. Okay. So we better just, let's keep our hope alive that this process is going to be brilliant. And also let us shun the negativity that is going around. Because I like the pictures we keep seeing once in a while of Sakaja is passing by and is saying hi to some ODM supporters. We are one Kenya. All the contestants are sons of this soil. Absolutely. So we better embrace everybody. And at the end of the day, do your thing, and when the day is done, let us remain as one people.
Paul, your closing comments very briefly.
Whatever it takes, to me, we must deal and address the issues that will result into saying that this election is credible and transparent. To me, if we don't deal with some of these issues that are arising, that tend to suggest that this election is already predetermined, or some people have already been set up to ensure that there is only one result in this election, then we are bound to have chaos. Regardless of how much time it takes, to me, election is a process, and if we can deal with those issues to ensure that the stage is uniform for everybody, let it be.
All right. Harrison, closing comments.
I agree with Joy. This is our election as a Kenyan people. Politicians are using the opportunity to seek electoral offices. They will occupy those offices who succeed. But on the 8th, on the 9th, we, the Kenyan people, ought to maintain peace, ought to cast our votes on the 8th, and then wait for the results. We should remain united. We should remain focused that this is our country. Let not politicians who are aspiring to occupy electoral posts use us. Do not then take up verbal abuse to your neighbor whom you live with because of a politician who, when they occupy that seat, you will probably see them next in the next electoral cycle.
All right, we'll have to wind up right there. Thank you very much, Harrison Kinyanjui, Joy Brenda Mdivo, and Paul Aol for joining us this morning.